We're going to go ahead and get things started.
You can only get so many trumpet players on the stage at the same time.
I know this is a panel that you've all been waiting for. So we'll put things together kind of in pieces here. Al Porcino, after his concert, went up to change clothes, so he's going to be down in just a minute, but we don't want to make you wait too much longer. So I want to introduce, now we called him the moderator, but again, he's really a part of this panel. But I figured he was the only guy that could keep things somehow under control on the stage. He always says that I get it, you know, I'm always getting him into these things, you know. I call him up, hey Bobby, we want to do a Bud Brisbois concert, or we want to do a Dizzy Gillespie concert, or the Miles Davis, Gil Evans thing. So I guess I do get him into a lot of stuff, but he's sure a wonderful guy to enthusiastically make all these things happen, and he does a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff. So now his biggest challenge, again, I'm going to let him get to it. Here's Bobby Shew.
One thing I can tell you for sure, I don't do anything I don't want to do. That's for sure. And when Ken asked me to moderate this panel, I haven't experienced stage fright or fear or anything like that in years. It's been pretty cool. He asked me to do this. I've been trembling for months. So I kept thinking. I've tried to catch him in the hallway and say, "What do you want me to do? What am I supposed to do? How am I going to keep these guys under control?" And I just want a pathway if I have to run out. But I thought about it a little bit, and it goes without saying that the respect and love I have for these guys to be up here, you know, is immense, you know, and it's quite humbling and almost overwhelming to still, after all these years, to be in the company of people like Al and Maynard, and unfortunately Buddy Childers, who was scheduled to be here, is very ill and couldn't be here, and that's a really sad thing because, in my estimation, there are, you know, being a lead trumpet player, you hear Al talking about it at all times on stage. But the thing about, I would say this about being a lead trumpet player, it's a lot of people, there are a lot of different kinds of lead trumpet players. Some of them are just, some of them can only hit high notes, and some of them can't hit very high notes, but they can swing the hell out of a band, you know. And it's, from my estimation, the thing about a lead trumpet player is the musicality that they have. They project a sound and a feel that sort of gives the identity of the band, you know. And they have to also be, they have to serve the writer. They have to be able to be flexible enough to do what the writer wants to hear and so forth. You know? But for my students, I've been teaching, or trying to teach, for a lot of years now. And I have, well, the most important student in the world is me, to myself, because I have to teach myself how to play this doggone trumpet and then keep up on it every day. But I've been certainly influenced by certain lead trumpet players, and the first time I heard Maynard Ferguson play lead, I mean, he gets the reputation for just being a high note trumpet player, but if you go back and check this guy's career out, he's an incredible jazz soloist. And you can hear albums where he's on albums with Dinah Washington and Clifford Brown, and he's holding his own right in there with all the heavies, you know. So he's a great jazz player. And then when he plays power lead stuff over the band, he's an incredible lead trumpet player. So the high notes is an extra little thing that he does, you know. Then there's Al Porcino, you know, and very important lead trumpet player. And he, especially like the Ken things, but the Terry Gibbs big band stuff that Al Porcino did is, I think, some of the best he's ever done. Stunning lead playing. And Buddy Childers, obviously, who was a very important lead trumpet player with back in the Kenton days, back in the 40s. And there are a lot of great ones. I always tell my students, you got to listen to the best ones, you know. So I make them listen to those three guys. Plus, I would add to that Conrad Gazzo, who was great for all of the Nelson Riddle and Billy May stuff. I would also add to that the great Snooky Young, who came right out of the Lunsford band and did the bassy stuff. and has established, all of these guys have established what the rest of us try to do to play lead trumpet. So without them, we wouldn't know what to do, except we'd just lead, that's all. So anyway, I'm, as I say, quite humbled to be in the company of these guys. And I didn't know how to do this, but I thought I would start things off with a bang. Here's Maynard Ferguson, please welcome. And please welcome Porcino.
It's the only thing we know how to do.
So there is absolutely no format on there. You can't do a format or anything, but the main thing is these guys have such vast histories and so forth. We're just going to turn them loose, let them tell stories and so forth, and see where this thing ends up. And then if any of you have any questions at some point down the road, we're going to open it up for some queries and sorts. So,
Well, for one thing, I'm most delighted to be here, and it's a lot of fun to see faces. It's funny that you guys aged and I didn't at all. Band leaders are the best liars, right, guys? We worked at it, you know. Bobby, you look wonderful, man, and two of the world's greatest trumpet players are right up here. Now, I tell you what, I'm just the screech guy. Remember that? They used to say that, you know. Yeah.
From Canada.
That from Canada. Oh, yeah, that's great. Very nice to be here. Yeah.
nice to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you. And we just got back off the road, and that means we go back on the road. Ed, what's my parole?
Yeah. A week.
Probably in a couple of hours.
Yeah, and it's one of the thrills of my career is just watching all the young guys in my own band and making sure that they don't play better than me, because if they do, I'll fire them.
It's true, it's true.
I had a lot of fun with both of these guys, and not too many of those things I can talk about right now. Vegas, right? Yeah, that's right. Oh boy, that's right, that's great. Anybody want to ask me a question? Are we going to do anything?
You can do anything you like, you know.
Anybody want to ask me a question like, did I really like
There's a
my
question.
first wife or something?
Is it true that you left the Montreal Conservatory of Music in disgrace?
Did you hear that question in the back of the room? They wanted, this guy asked if, is it true that Maynard left the Montreal Conservatory of Music in disgrace?
They were disgraceful, that's right, yeah. Forgot about that. Yeah. Actually, the Montreal Conservatory of Music, I don't think I ever went there. The Conservatoire de Musique de la Provence de Quebec to the city de Montreal, right? Any Canadians here? Okay. And, no, but Benny Baker was my teacher there. They used to fly him up once every 2 weeks, and then the principal trumpet from the Montreal Montreal Symphony, and they both examined my classical trumpet playing and decided it was hopeless.
There's a famous story, you know, the Titans thing that was a great symphony written to feature Maynard called the Titans. Who was it?
That was
Bill
William Russo, but Bill Russo. But as soon as he got that gig writing for the New York Philharmonic and Bernstein, he now you have to say William Russo, no Bill Russo. You know, Bill Russo was the jazz trombone player with Stan Kenton. But once you become a composer, you got to be very careful how you talk to him. I hope he hears this.
The story is they're rehearsing the piece, and this ridiculous high piece, and if I'm not mistaken, the story goes that Maynard makes his first entrance in this thing, in this, you know, and Bernstein stops and he says, "Excuse me, Mr. Ferguson, this part is marked pianissimo." And
Oh yeah.
and Bill Vacchiano, I think it was the principal trumpet player. He says to Mr. Bernstein, he says, "Excuse me, Mr. Bernstein, that is his pianissimo."
That's a true story. It's interesting, the trumpet playing, that every symphony orchestra, it's different according to the conductor. You know, because the Philadelphia Orchestra, I think Eugene Ormandy, going way back, forte in that orchestra was forte, you know, but Bernstein liked everything kind of quiet, you know. I think he liked to hear the violinists, you know. I had no interest in that. They usually get in the way, don't they?
They do. In every way possible. I don't think 12/8 existed until violinists were around. We had to write in 12/8 to teach them to play da da da.
Oh yeah.
Al?
Yeah, well, first thing I want to say is the first time I heard Maynard, he was in Canada with his own band. It was the fall of '47 when I joined Stan. We came up there. We're in this big building. It had several floors. We were on one floor, and I'm warming up, and I hear trumpet on the next line. What the hell? I stand up, I said, "This guy's playing higher than me." No, the reason I say that is because before he came to the stage, I was the king of the high notes. Yeah, still, in case you didn't know that, I was. Yeah, I mean, only me and Snooker Young and Paul Webster were doing it, you know what I'm saying?
That's right, yeah.
Anyhow, in 1950, when we both went with Stan, I really loved it then because I said, "Maynard, you got it. I'm going to concentrate on being a lead player." And it worked out great. It was beautiful.
The real truth was he still stayed the lead player, and so did Buddy Childers. And then all of a sudden, I'd notice on my fourth trumpet part, and, I refused to play fifth because of my ego.
This is good. This guy's got humor.
But they would pencil in about 4 bars as the writers and composers of the Canton band just got wilder and wilder, you know, and crazier, and 8/8 wasn't even used. They like to do it like the violin notations. I don't know what that is. It's hard to count those ledger lines. Yeah, and they would do things like mezzo forte, pianissimo, and things like that. And then I found out half of them were just showing a sense of humor. You know? They knew they weren't going to get it. I'll tell you that. Actually, both men that are up here with me, I can't afford them anymore, but I wish they were with my band right now because they're two very marvelous trumpet players and great friends. Anybody want to ask me a question that legally I can answer?
Maynard, before Kenton, I think you spent some time with Boyd Rayburn. Could you
Yes.
talk a little about that, please?
And Jimmy Dorsey.
Yeah, that's right. The first band I came with when I came to the United States was Boyd Rayburn's band, which was a very avant-garde band, so to speak, for that time. And it was so hip we very seldom worked. And, but nonetheless, it was a great experience. And talk about getting to know every musician in New York City, because personnel would be whoever Boyd could get. And as a result, I did play with some wonderful musicians on that band, which was that awful combination of so many guys sight reading a very difficult book, because the book was written by people like Johnny Richards and I'm leaving
George
out.
Handy.
Oh yeah, Handy. It was so many just great writers, you know, and it was. If we could just keep Boyd off that bass saxophone. Other than that, he was great. Yeah.
And Jimmy Dorsey.
Okay, Jimmy Dorsey, I loved. What a wonderful experience that was, because I was a big fan of Dixieland music, and I was really lousy at playing it myself. At least that's my own evaluation, and it's the truth. Something about the swing era into the bebop era and all that, but it was Jimmy Dorsey's band. You had, he always had his little Dixieland band within the big band, and it was a joy to sit in the same section with Jack Teagarden's brother. I'm sorry I said it that way, but Charlie Teagarden was just a marvelous Dixieland trumpet player, you know. And so I was a great, I was a big fan of his, actually, you know. And eventually I got so I could kind of play that way, but I was never the real thing. No.
I don't think you need to worry about it now.
Something about those minor nines and flat fives even, and was like, you know, what the hell's that kid doing? You know, and all that, yeah.
What about the famous solo that they banned?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was All the Things You Are, of
All
course.
the Things You Are, beautiful song.
Yeah. And that was written, the arrangement was written by Denny Farnan, a Canadian composer, arranger, and when I joined the Barnett band, the Charlie Barnett band, he was with Capitol Records then, and by the time the record came out, Charlie Barnett got a call from Jim Conklin, who was then the the president of Capitol Records, to say, for God's sake, oh yeah, by then I was playing All the Things You Are as my featured tune with Stan Kenton's band during the first year I was with him. And the call came anyway to Stan, because by that time the Barnett band had folded and Charlie was in retirement, and it was, for God's sake, Stan, do not let that Ferguson kid play all the things you are, and take it out of the tour, you know. And that was, we were on that Innovations in Modern Music tour, and we had added strings to the arrangement and all that kind of stuff, and that was because it was in those days $1 million lawsuit was big. Nowadays you get that for a car accident or something, you know. But nonetheless, it was a lot of people said that it certainly got me a lot of notoriety and publicity, you know, because they had to pull it out of the book, and all threats of lawsuits, and then the arguments against should there be such a thing. You can, you know, it gets very into all those legal things that I couldn't care anything about, because it meant that Shorty Rogers, Stan was such a great band leader, and he immediately put me with Shorty and said, come up with something. And Shorty Rogers came up with the thing that just had my name to it, and was called from the Stan Kenton Presents album. And gosh, I think we wrote that and mostly in the back of Stan's Buick Roadmaster.
Right, Stan didn't ride in the bus.
Yeah.
He was clever. He had his car. We were doing one-nighters, and it's rough doing one-night. You do the job, either you check into a motel, or you stay in the bus and go 500 miles. I don't know how he did it. He'd jump in his Buick.
That's right.
We'd be going all night in the bus. We'd get there 8 in the morning, you turn on the radio, and there's Stan being interviewed by a local disc jockey. I mean, he was clever. You got to promote. You know, you can't just expect things to happen. And he was very good at that. Anyhow, the thing was called Maynard Ferguson.
Yeah. That was in the that was kind of a necessity, because they pulled all the things you are out of the things so they could avoid a lawsuit. So I think I caused a lot of trouble to a lot of band leaders. You know, but I really I think that was that whole thing was a thrilling thing for me to come to the United States, and Boyd Rayburn to Jimmy Dorsey, and I was kind of a fish out of water in that band, but enjoying like a band that played totally different from me, you know. But it was a great experience, you know.
I don't know if the people know, you were a multi-instrumentalist with your own band. I couldn't believe it. He's playing trumpet, he's playing French horn, and whatever else.
Yeah, the saxophones, and I would play oboe duets with my brother. However, my brother played the oboe a little better than me. Well, a lot better, okay. But I really enjoyed that, and just somehow I had mother and father that were they were school teachers and principals originally. Then my mother retired, and my father was a school principal, and he was the first one to say, now Canadians out there don't get mad at me, but my father would say, how come we don't teach music in the schools like they do in the States? You know, the States, that's very Canadian. But he really meant it. He was very strong on that, and for a guy who was, I loved my father very much, but he was without a doubt the world's lousiest banjo player. Yeah, and that was his only instrument, and like I say, he was not very good at it, but he loved it. And my mother had she played piano and stuff like that. And Bobby, have you ever heard me play piano?
Do we have one in the room?
No. No, I was just going to say, if you haven't, you're very fortunate. Yeah. That was not my thing, you know.
I remember when I was on the band, on Maynard's band, band, a comic, and a singer, and you never knew who you were going to get. Well, we got stuck with Tommy Sands, was the singer. Remember this? Tommy Sands, right? Annette Funicello and all that stuff, you know, oh man. There's the hippest bebop band in the world, and then Tommy Sands up there, and he's got two little go-go dancers on the wiggling, you know, the fringe and all that stuff. And he does a nightly Charlie Chaplin act with the bowler and the cane, you know.
I remember.
And he does this thing every night. Well, one night, I don't know what got in your mind, but after Tommy did his little bit, he split, and he didn't even stick around and listen to anything else. Then we're sitting there, and Maynard comes out of the wings with the bowler on and the cane, and he's doing a whole Charlie Chaplin act. He's doing like a tap dancing and the whole thing. This guy is like a vaudeville show. This whole thing, one guy, you know, it's unbelievable.
Well, you know what's so funny about that is that a well-kept secret most of the time was that's how I started out as a vaudeville act in Montreal, Canada. And I would say, and now he's playing the trombone. Oh, now hear him play the saxophone. Oh, hear him play it. And there would be a very looking, lovely lady in a short skirt that would come out, and I did everything from burlesque theaters, that's a musical act, to that kind of thing. So that's where I became just such a vulgar show-off, you know. I was tailor-made to be a band leader, right?
Exactly. I said that for years.
What about the trumpet section with Charlie Barnett's trumpet section?
Oh, that was me going to school, and I would have the feature number that I would do, but Ray Wetzel was such a marvelous lead trumpet player, and
John Howell.
oh yeah, but I want John Howell was the relief lead trumpet player, and then there was the Three Sons. Remember that group? Yeah. Okay. Well, that was not the original. The original was Severinsen, Erickson, and Ferguson, and we were the three other trumpets, and we just loved to call ourselves. Yeah, we're the Three Sons. And they said, oh, really? And Doc Severinsen, of course, was such a great player on that band, and Rolf Eriksson was from Sweden, and of course I was from Canada, so it was quite an international trumpet section there, and a great one. And but the funny thing is that the rest of us, the Three Sons, would always be asked by their people that knew them, just like they'd ask me. They'd say, "Oh yeah, oh you were with Barnett. Oh you played lead with Barnett." I'll say no, and then say, "Oh, did Doc play lead? No. Did Rolf play lead?" Rolf was very popular in his own country in Sweden, and then came over. He was the main jazz man there, and he came to the United States just like I came from Canada. And but it was funny that Ray Wetzel, and by the way, he was, you know, these guys are nice guys, you know, and Ray Wetzel was a nice guy most of the time. That kind of lead player, do you know what I mean? As long as you played the parts real good, you were all right. But he, you know how he'd do it? He wouldn't yell or anything like that. The gig would be over, and there might be even certain, especially in ballrooms, interpersonal relationships that might be projected. No. He'd say, 15 minutes, guys, and the gig's over, and that meant you're going to have a sectional, a trumpet sectional. 15 minutes after, well, they're still packing up, you know, but that might go until he was happy with it, you know. I think he's a little like that, too. yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
There's a question back there.
In as much as we're reaching back, can either of you talk about Earl Spencer?
There's a question about Earl Spencer.
Big band.
It was an LA band, and the trumpet player that I really I respected this guy, and I loved him, and I was the high note king before he came to the stage. And the guy I'm talking about was Al Killian.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Unbelievable. And he was with the Earl Spencer, and I have an LP of the Earl Spencer band, and I play it all the time to hear Al and bring back memories. But,
Well, that's great. My memory, of course, is of Al Killian because the very first gig that I played in the United States legally, we're reading about those guys in the newspapers and television nowadays. You know, I think I was illegal for the first year, and I just didn't. I just would go across the border and play the trumpet. You know, I thought that was cool. You know, and apparently it isn't. You know, but it was too late. Yeah. But anyway, on Boyd Raven's band, the very first night that I played there, the sort of sweetheart guy that just said, "Yeah, come on," it was Al Killian, and he was featured with Boyd Raven's band at that time, and he had great chops and all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, yeah.
Over here, question. Could you speak about Irene Krall coming to your band?
There's a question about Irene Crowell joining Maynard's band.
Yeah, sure. Irene Krall, of course, was, I just adored her, and my wife just took after her and took her to Sax and to Jax. JAX, that's a woman's store. And I have lots of daughters, and I still have most of my money. But anyway, my somebody, yeah, I have to tell the story as it really is, you know. And Irene's no longer with us, but I was auditioning girl singers, which is quite a pastime, by the way. And so one of the girl singers turned to the lady that was like, because there was about 5 of them, and I didn't kind of like doing that. You know, you wanted somehow it was I don't know, not my thing. But on the other hand, I really wanted to have a girl singer with the band. You know, so. But it was really my wife, and she put on that tweed suit of hers and looked very businesslike, and Irene Krall being nervous, and needless to say, she was the winner, but there was 4 other girls there, and they got up and sang, and I just had the rhythm section, you know, and wanted to hear what they did to do, and we have a mixed audience here. I'll have to clean this up just a little, but she said she had just heard the band, you know, and of course she was the sister of Roy Krall, great singer, pianist, and so she turned around to this unknown woman that seemed to be running the auditions and said, I'm going to get this gig if I have to go to bed with him. And didn't realize she was talking to my wife. Funny thing is, she got the gig. My wife had a good sense of humor. Yes.
I have a question. Some years ago, I went to see the Red Rodney Ira Sullivan
Oh.
quartet, and do you know about Ira Sullivan, or any of you, because he plays both the reeds and the...
Oh, yes. Yeah. Marvelous talent. Yeah.
Not only, oh, okay. The only thing about it. I mean, that's all.
Okay. All right. No, because that was a guy I wish I'd heard more. I think he wasn't around an awful lot longer as far as being predominant and being able to see him. Remember, I was, what was I, about 22 when I first came to the United States or something like that. And then I went right into a road band. So sometimes we don't get to stay in the jazz meccas of the world when we're doing one-nighters with a jazz band, you know, or a dance band like Jimmy Dorsey, where we played some very small towns and some very big cities. And, yeah.
There's a question over there.
Have Maynard discussed organizing his first band after these earlier years and how you attracted the talent to that band that you did?
Okay, the question, I guess, was really about talking about how I would put a band together in the early years and things like that. It always starts, you know, with, you know somebody, you heard somebody, and then all of a sudden, I think Willie Maiden was my #1 guy for, because he was a writer and I was not, and I was a show-off and he wasn't, and that meant I would get to be the leader, you know. And I'm losing track of the question.
About forming your first big band.
Oh yeah, so I went right from the big bands, and the final band that I was with Kenton, and as that folded, it wasn't too long before I was offered a yearly contract with Paramount Studios, and but that was the age of the big epics like the 10 Commandments, 3 years in the making, and meanwhile you were making all that money, and I learned how to drink. I was good at that for a while. Oh yeah, yeah, because you were on a quota system. You were not allowed to do other movies. That the union was very strict on that. That we were making too much money, which we probably were, and but the point is, over the course of 3.5 years, and because I had a reputation, I was on time and a half, but instead of the hours that we were allowed to be called for, we averaged 3.5 hours a week, and sometimes it was all put in together. So there were times when I would, boy, yeah, we're talking about like 6.5 weeks with no playing, and you also were not allowed to play, by the way, in ways that you'd like to, and they didn't even like you. Oh yeah, they didn't like you go to. Boy, 47 guys are going to be mad at me. Local 47, that is, and but if you went and sat in at a jam session, you got fines, you know, and for me it was not trying to play for nothing. It was trying to remember where my chops were, you know, and all that kind of thing, because you knew sooner or later when you did get your Paramount call, they wanted you with your chops, you know, and but that orchestra fell to pieces in a strange sort of a way, that a lot of the members of that Paramount Orchestra, when it got to the point that they were doing the epics and none of the B pictures or any of the extra stuff, many of them went into businesses and stuff like that. But that also opened up a lot of fun things, because the lead trombone player had no chops left at all because he wasn't playing, wasn't allowed to play, and all that. So he just called Frank Rossellino, and he'd call in sick and say, and make sure you send it in a. So you never knew Paramount who was going to sit next to you, you know, and yet it worked out good because that's kind of the way the movie industry is now, actually, huh? Okay.
Is that when you were Tiger Brown?
Sorry, what?
Tiger Brown?
Tiger Brown? What's that? What's your question?
Didn't they ever call you Tiger Brown when you were recording?
Yeah, that was because I was under contract to another label, and Tiger was the name of my Chihuahua, and Brown was the name of my first wife. Yeah.
Rogers was Roger Short.
What?
Shorty Rogers was Roger Short.
Oh, yeah, but he had some. Did we call him pseudonyms?
His name was Milton Rodzinski from the Bronx.
Yeah, that's his real name.
Milton Rodzinski.
Yes.
Question over here, please.
Okay.
Bobby,
Yeah.
it's me, Dennis.
Oh, hi, Dennis.
Listen,
Look at that.
we were in here yesterday talking about Robert Graettinger and here's two trumpet players that played with him in high school. And I remember Stan talking about the story and you also telling the story many, many times, and I think people would enjoy hearing it, about early in the morning getting ready to play a trumpet and what took place prior to going there and making the recording and what happened as you were getting ready to do the recording and what the whole story before and for breakfast and everything. And how did you get along with Robert Graettinger? And Ira Sullivan is in Miami, by the way.
He's always been there. Can't get him out of my hand.
Okay, so we're talking about.
A trumpet and, you know, what you need, the band had to be held up.
Oh yeah, Bob Graettinger. Bob Graettinger was a genius type of. He really was unique because he was a great orchestrator and a wonderful but very far-out composer. And he wrote The City of Glass for Canton, and then he wrote This Modern World, of which one of the things was called a trumpet. And so many trumpet players thought that title was like, you know, if you're playing the symphony, you have your B-flat trumpet, and at least you have a C trumpet, and an A, whatever, you know. And a lot of people would say A trumpet. Oh, okay. Or the title read any way that you wanted it to, but it was really just Graettinger called it a trumpet. And Canton had a lot of faith in Bob Graettinger, and rightfully so, but on the other hand, that was a unique experience because he said, Ferguson, that's how Stan always called me by my family name, and he said, Ferguson, I'm sending this guy up, and he's going to sort of be with you for a couple of weeks. And the band was on in between tours, and Bob Graettinger suddenly became my, you might say, roommate. Yeah, I was unmarried at the time, so the two of us, I had a nice little house, and he was very definitely different. He was like a praying mantis. You know, he'd always be there, and nothing weird sexually or anything like that. But boy, I tell you what, he was just a vibe. And he'd wait for me to practice, and I never was an infamous. I practiced, but I wasn't very. I didn't have a thing about it. I didn't have a system. I didn't have a, you know, and yeah, no routine. Thank you. Yeah, and a pretty disorganized person, I guess. And Graettinger didn't mind, but he would just wait for me to pick up my horn, and then he'd and if I played anything, he'd sit there for a while. Then all of a sudden, he'd jump up and say, "Would you do?" And you're just warming up. You're just playing, you know. And he'd say, "Just do that again." And he had like a memory. Wow. Like, because if I play a whole long phrase just fooling around, we're not talking about out of the Arbin book or out of the any of those other funny books. But he would really be able to later write down every note that I had just played, and even the ones that didn't sound too good, you know. And he just had a photogenic memory. Well, how do you apply it to that? I don't know, but that was his the way he wrote a trumpet, and then he'd say, "Are you going to play some more?" You know, he'd never say, "Well, would you try to play something on an A minor?" He would purposely not direct me in any way, and then somebody that the thing was written, a trumpet, you know, and I looked at it and I said, "Oh, it's a nice piece of writing, very difficult." And he said, "No, that's what you always play." And you'll discover that I think we're all like that. You know, when we're fooling around with our horns and we're warming up or we're whatever, it's just something that we do, that we've done for so often we don't think about it. It's like the saxophone player trying reeds, you know. He isn't really thinking about how great he's playing or anything like that. He wants to know, with us getting our chops going or getting our air going or whatever, you know, or trying to be sober. Yes, sir.
Over there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You had to win several times.
I had a question for Al. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about your experience with Thad Jones.
There's a question about Al's experience with the Thad Jones Orchestra.
Oh, yeah.
Before I say anything, are you a Thad Jones fan?
Can we have a drum roll, please?
Maybe another different question.
Tell the truth.
Yeah, I worked with the band twice. It was 69. We went on a one-month tour of Europe. There's a very good video of us playing in the radio or recording studio in Copenhagen. I don't know if it's available here in the States, but it's quite good. Yeah, well, about that, a big talent. Let me say that before you get the wrong impression that I didn't like the guy. Big talent, there's no question about it. I wish he had played more because he let all the other guys play, and he was a good sword. His music was a little tough, you know. I mean, the saxophones could play it, but I couldn't play it, you know. I was never a technician, you know. And anyhow, he sort of became the new Duke Ellington, you know. And I have to be honest, it wasn't my cup of tea. And then I joined the band again in '76 when we went to Europe and played a month at the new club there, the Domicile, packed every night. You know what I don't like about some guys? When they get real big, they really take advantage of it. I mean, it's not being professional. Coming late, trying to explain a chart takes 10 minutes significant, but I like to do things professionally. And he always had a heavyweight sax section, you know, Joe Henderson, Jerry Dodgen, Jerome Richardson, Eddie Daniels, Pepper Adams, and so forth. They could play the music, but I couldn't. There is a good video that I said we did in Copenhagen, and that's worth having. And yeah. Well, then you talk about his co-leader, Mel Lewis. I mean, Mel Lewis, great drummer and all that, but he never said anything. He let Dad run the whole show. Why not? That made him world famous. And I just heard the band 2 weeks ago in New York, and the one thing I didn't like then, and I still don't like it, when I go to hear a band, I want to hear an ensemble in tutti. There you go in, the tenors playing chorus after chorus, trombones playing chorus after chorus, trumpets playing chorus, and you don't hear any ensemble. For me, big band means ensemble. I want to hear solos, I go hear a quintet. As I say, that was a big talent, but I have to be honest, I didn't enjoy working on the band. Simple as that.
Bobby,
Okay, yes.
Maynard, would you reminisce about Jimmy Ford for a few minutes?
Jimmy Ford, the alto player.
Oh, yeah. All right. First of all, one of the most favorite naughty boys to ever be on my band. I absolutely adored Jimmy Ford, and I liked him so much. And Willie Maiden, who was, aside from being the world's greatest and beer drinker, yeah, he was a wonderful, of course, a Ranger saxophonist and all that, but he just loved the way Jimmy Ford played the alto saxophone. And he auditioned for me, and as soon as we heard his solo playing, this is in Birdland, and it didn't take long for us to discover that he couldn't read a note. He literally could not read a note. And, you know, like the A is that the one with the first two fingers. You know, and Willie Maiden was that kind of a team player. He said, "Yeah, what a soloist, you know." He said, "If you'll hire him, I'll teach him." And Willie Maiden taught Jimmy Ford how to read music on the gig, because it wasn't like he started a month later. He opened with us that night in Birdland, and boy, there was a lot of scuffling going on with guys. Luckily, I had 4 saxophones, and I had another cats could cover a lot of the lead parts, but Jimmy had all the great sound and everything for it. Just had no music education whatsoever, just great ears and great record collections and things of that nature. And he had been fired off so many bands. I don't mind saying this because I was the last hope. You know, and it really amounted to that. And he just decided, okay, it's this one or you know, I'm out of here, you know, whatever. And but it was really Willie Maiden just loved the way he played his solos and stuff like that. And you know, there's no more dismal place than an 10 till 4 a.m. in the morning jazz club when you're in there at 10 o'clock in the morning. You know, and that's, he'd be teaching Jimmy Ford his parts, you know, because Jimmy was really just memorizing, you know. Willie wouldn't have that. He was a good teacher. No, I want you, you know. And it was a very unique thing. I don't think I ever had that before or afterwards on my band, where one guy in the same section would say, okay, I'll teach you, but on the job training, you know. And believe me, there were a lot of wrong notes going down too for a while, you know. Yeah.
Didn't you start your first band here in L.A. around 57, something like that?
You mean my first? Oh yeah, I had an experimental band because we had so much time off at Paramount, and then I decided, no, I want to start my own band. I was with I think Mercury Records, and then eventually I got the Birdland contract with. What's the name of Birdland's record label? Yeah. Oh yeah, Roulette Records, and I believe Morris Levy was a Jesuit priest who. As I recall, but the memory's a little funny now, you know. But nonetheless, Morris Levy owned a lot of enterprises, including me. Yeah. He owned me for a while, didn't he? Yeah.
Real quick question, probably everybody else knows but me. Lynn Nicholson, why such a short stint, and why such a short stint in your band, and what was the sort of next?
The question about Lynn Nicholson.
Oh yeah, well he was just an extremely talented lead trumpet player, and the short tenure I can't even. I did not fire him, first of all. So, and I wasn't very good at that, you know. Yeah.
Was there any compression between him and Stan Martin?
Oh God, this guy must be writing for one of those rags or something like that. And actually, they had the same wife, and well, let's make them happy. Just a minute now.
Interestingly, Stan Marks now is a limo driver up in Oregon, and Lynn Nicholson lives in Las Vegas and has designed some sort of very high-tech camera stuff. And that's his business. He's making millions of bucks doing all these unbelievable camera things he's designed. So, you know,
I did not know that.
I'm looking for a real job myself. You know, this trumpet stuff's got to go. Mike?
I'm standing here thinking of all the records that I've heard Al on, and for some reason, Buddy Rich did a record called Mercy Mercy, that you were called in, as I read in the liner notes, to play lead, even though you really weren't on the band at that time.
I had joined about a week before we went into Jesus
Well,
Palace.
I'm not finished. The question really is, how did you get along? How did you get along with Buddy? So.
Just Mike's question is about Al's relationship with Buddy Rich and the Mercy Mercy album in Vegas.
Yeah, well, I knew Buddy from 1944 when he was with Tommy Dorsey out there in California. He had heard me with Louis Prima playing all these high notes. I guess he thought I was a jazz player. Anyhow, I was with Louis Prima in New York, Park Central Hotel. I get a telegram. Tommy Dorsey wants you. Get on a plane. I get out here. They're in Paramount Studios making a picture. And I meet Tommy, okay, blah, blah, blah. And the first tune they want to record is Song of India. As you know, Bunny Bergen made that fantastic solo. It's a classic, and they want me to play the solo. I mean, I wasn't a jazz player anyhow. It was not a very pleasant few months I was on the band. But what else was in the question?
I'm just trying to picture, knowing what we think we know about Buddy's personality, and I know, certainly Bobby worked with it too, how you two got along.
He was the most difficult man in the world at that time. Because he was bigger than Tommy Dorsey. People came, we were doing a 15-minute Lucky Strike radio show. We were working on the film out there. We were playing at night at the Hollywood Canteen. This is 1944 during the war. And, he'd come to the studio in a sweatshirt with a towel, and we were in our uniforms, And he had the biggest ego in the world, which is understandable. Nobody could play those paradiddles like he did and all that stuff. And that was my first experience with Buddy. And then, of course, when I joined him in 1968, I'd been here for 10 years, and then, long story, I left LA thing the first week. Lean in. Saturday night, we finished the second show. Buddy says, wait a minute, fellas, don't get understand. I want you back here at 3 in the morning. We're going to record. And we start recording all those things, including this suite that was really tough. Channel 1 suite. And Don Menza was on the band. And Art Pepper and I. And yeah, it was quite unique. People were just dropping in. Hey, if you want to come in, hear the rehearsal, blah, blah, blah. That is quite a good album, actually, the Mercy Mercy album. Mercy Mercy was the title number. It was a rock thing that this trombone player at Berkeley wrote. What was his name?
Phil Wilson.
Yeah, another far-out player. What can I say? I don't like far-out players.
Speaking of far out, we're out of time up here, and you have the next event starting in 15 minutes. How about a hand for Al Porcino? One final thing before you go. One last thing before you go. Maynard is going right now to the Tower Records booth and going to be signing his new CD. So there you are.